Hey everyone, welcome back to the range. My name is Matt and I'm a gunsmith. And today we're going to mount our Arken Optics SH-4 Gen 2 6 to 24 by 50 scope on our Ruger Precision Magnum in 338 Lapua. There are varying different types of tools you may need to accomplish this. The best would probably be to actually have a gun vise, but I don't have one of those yet. So what I do is I have a vise on my bench out here. I have a set of the barrel blocks that I will put the barrel in, clamp it down very gently. We'll need to level this gun as best as we can so that when we mount our mount and then our scope, we can then level that and make sure everything is nice and kosher, so when you're looking down range, your crosshairs are nice and level. As mentioned a bunch of times, you're going to need various levels. Probably not one this long. This is a little overkill for scope work. But we have some various different levels from Wheeler Engineering. Arken sent over a set of scope rings and a solid cantilever mount. I'm going to use the solid mount today. Depending on how much rail space your gun may have or may not have, you may need to use a set of rings. But I have a solid piece of rail up here so I can really move our scope for our eye relief back how I see needed. So we're going to use the solid mount. First thing we're going to want to do is make sure our gun is as level as possible side to side, so when you mount your scope that your crosshairs will be level. It will help if your bench is level. Mine is level this way, but front to back it's a little offset. So I have the little Wheeler bubble levels for mounting scopes, and I have them placed on the rail because that's where we're going to mount the scope. There are parts on the Ruger Precision that are flat that would work as well, but they don't, when I check them, they weren't level up against this rail. So I want to make sure I put my little bubble levels on our rail here. And it's pretty close. If you're OCD, you're going to want that bubble dead set in the middle, but I've got mine pretty close. Our mount to rifle bolts are a T25 Torx, and the torque specification on them is 30 inch-pounds. Always pay attention to anything listed either in the manual of the scope mount or the scope manual itself. The scope caps are only 18 inch-pounds. I do believe I've seen higher from other scope manufacturers, so I'm not sure if they're using a slightly thinner aluminum tube, but definitely do not exceed those torque specifications. I'm not so much concerned about eye relief on our cantilever mount because I can adjust that later. So I just want to snug this down in place so that it doesn't move when we're setting it up. We'll also mount that throw lever and the little bubble level that Arken sent as well. We've got our scope right here. Set this guy in here. Hopefully our cap on the top of the scope is very flat because that's typically where I'll set the second level to ensure that it's level with the gun. We'll take our scope caps here, set them on there. They are also T25. As you tighten these down, we don't need to snug them up. We need to get them just on there and holding place so we can adjust the scope in our mount to get it even, or you can offset it a little bit, but I like to try to make it even again because it's a cantilever mount or a solid mount, so I can move it back and forth for eye relief. If you were using the scope rings, you would want to snug them down and then get your eye relief set. You know, you've got about an inch or so of play with the solid mount for moving it back and forth. I will usually tighten these down in a crisscross pattern because you want to ensure that the scope cap has even gaps on each side as you're tightening it down. So I have about the same amount of gap on my scope here between my scope ring and my adjustment turrets there. I still want to have a little bit of side-to-side play here so we can get it level. So I don't want to torque these down just yet. So I take my second bubble level, put that on the top here. It's telling me that I'm not level. So right about there, I'm level. I will check through our eyepiece to see how level it looks, at least to me. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. And it actually looks pretty good right there. Once you've verified your scope body is level, and then you look through the scope to make sure that the crosshairs are indeed level as well. I've mounted a scope before that the top turret actually was not level, so I went ahead and mounted everything, never looked through the scope, and then woe is me, and I had to redo it all over again. So I'm going to start tightening down these scope caps, and we want to maintain the same gap on each side if possible, so that you don't tighten one side down too far. And if you do, it's possible to cause the scope not to be level anymore if you tighten one side too much. I've got our scope caps snugged down pretty well. I've maintained a fairly decent gap between each side. You know, one side is not all the way smushed down and the other side's not this huge gap. Depending on the quality of your mount, you may never get a perfect side-to-side gap. So now the fun part is our fat wrench. I have it set to around 18 inch-pounds. It's below the 20 mark and above the 15. A digital one would come in handy here for such a precise measurement. So I'm just going to work in a crisscross pattern, tighten these guys down. Making sure that I'm not bumping the scope. Check to make sure your gaps aren't all lopsided. They look pretty good. Check your scope again to make sure that you're still level. Looks pretty good there. We'll mount our throw lever while we're at it. Again, they included all the Allen wrenches you need to make this happen. There's a little tiny Allen wrench. This little guy comes apart like this. And basically you kind of just stretch it around the magnification ring here, get it in place. Then you can slip this guy on the one side, maybe. And then grab your little tiny screw, drop the Allen wrench. Now you have to play with the location of your throw lever here. You obviously don't want it all the way flush with the side of your rifle, because then you'll never be able to grab it and spin it the other way. So you'll just kind of have to loosen it and position it in a good spot so that when you throw it to one side, you can still grab it and twist it back the other way. So I've got it pretty good right there, so I can get my thumb in there and rotate it all the way back to 6 power. I would say for me, that's a pretty good area right there. 6 is all the way about the 2 o'clock position, and 24 power is all the way down about the 7 to 8 o'clock. So I'll just snug that up a little bit. We'll also mount the bubble level that they sent too. So when you're making those long range shots, you know that your gun is level side to side. Same concept, you've got a screw and then a little slip joint for the actual bubble level. Not sure where we want to put this guy. Like the throw lever, our bubble level is a slip fit. You'll slip it over the scope body and you'll use the little screw to tighten it down. Now obviously it's circular, so you're going to have to level that bubble level with the other levels, how many you ever have on the gun, to make sure that that is an accurate representation of where your level is. You also want to make sure that you don't, interfere with the throw lever that you put on there. Probably personal preference on which side you want that level on, if you want it at all. And that's about all she wrote, folks. Very easy installation. I know a lot of people will sometimes use the little wedge mounts that you wedge underneath the scope body in between the mount to get it level. This is how I've always done it. It works fairly well for me. Now, depending on your firearm, you may have, a scope base at the front and rear like a traditional bolt action. You may not have a full 1913 Picatinny rail, so you may be more involved in installation versus what I had here. Now, if you have a bore sighter, then you would go ahead and bore sight this so that it's pretty close. Typically what I will do, since this is a bolt action gun, is I'll go set it up at 25 yards. I'll take the bolt out here and try to look down through the bore, see where the bore points on my target, and then I'll kind of adjust my scope there so that I'm on at 25 yards. Don't forget to double and triple check that all of your bolts are torqued to specification. For me, like I said, the scope caps are the main concern for me. I just snug the mount to gun down enough so that I could get it on here. I'll adjust eye relief when I get to the range so that I can turn this all the way up to full magnification and point it down range and make sure that I'm good. And then there is the rear focus piece for the reticle, and I'll set that while I'm out to the range too. Well, everyone, that's all I have for you. I'm no Caleb a Savant, but I didn't think I did too bad being a gunsmith today. At the end of all my videos, I take a moment to thank all those who help make these possible. Number one is my Patreon supporters. Number two is Arken Optics, again, who in full transparency sent me this scope package to review with no strings attached. And of course, number three is you all for watching. I'm going to get out of here because my wife is using polyurethane and I'm getting a little lightheaded. Until next time, I'll catch you at the range.